Welcome to history's mysterious minds, where silence speaks louder than confession, and some disappear not to escape justice, but the world itself. Tonight, we wander into the woods of Maine to find a man who lived without being seen. For nearly 3 decades he survived the seasons, the solitude, the silence. No fire, no friends, no trace. They called him the North Pond Hermit, but who was he, and why did he walk away from everything? This is the story of Christopher Thomas Knight. In 1986, 20-year-old Christopher Knight drove his Subaru into the dense wilderness of Maine. He left no note, no destination, no explanation anyone could find. He stepped into the forest and never walked back out. Days passed, then years, but no missing persons report was filed. His family assumed he simply wanted to be alone, that maybe he needed space, time, solitude. In a way they were right, more right than they could have imagined. Because Christopher didn't vanish, he chose to disappear, and for nearly 3 decades he lived hidden from the world, unseen, unheard, and utterly alone. Christopher Knight didn't join a commune or start over in some distant town under a new name. He didn't seek a new life. He erased the old one. He vanished entirely. No identification, no government records, no phone, no bank account. For 27 years there was no trace of him. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. The world kept spinning. News cycles changed. Generations grew up. And he let it all unfold without him. While millions rushed through daily routines, Knight stood still, deep in the woods, living a life of silence and solitude. Not lost, not hiding. Simply gone. Deep in the dense woods near North Pond, Christopher Knight discovered a natural hollow, hidden from view, invisible from any trail. It was shaded by thick brush and sheltered by ancient boulders, a place no hiker would stumble across by chance. There, he built a makeshift camp, 2 tents, a few tarps, and a growing collection of supplies, most of them stolen under cover of night. He never lit a fire, not once. Instead, he used propane to cook and stay warm, because even a wisp of smoke could betray him, could end the silence he had fought so hard to preserve. In that quiet hollow, he became a ghost among the trees, present but unseen. Season after season, year after year, cabin owners around North Pond noticed strange thefts. Small things would go missing: batteries, books, peanut butter, flashlights, propane tanks. Nothing of great value, but always something useful, something necessary. At first, they blamed forgetfulness, then each other. But as the years passed, a legend grew. They began calling him the Hermit, a ghostly figure who slipped in while they slept, took only what he needed, and vanished without a trace. He never took money, never broke a window or forced a lock. He moved like a shadow, careful, quiet, and impossibly precise. And still, no one ever saw his face. He was polite but persistent. By the time Christopher Knight was finally caught, he had committed over 1,000 burglaries in the woods surrounding North Pond. Over the years, he quietly learned the routines of cabin owners, their schedules, the placement of motion sensors, and every security weakness he could exploit. But he never stole out of greed or malice. He took only what he needed to survive, and what fed his mind. Books, magazines, radios, tools to keep his thoughts alive in the endless silence. Through long winters and total isolation, he read constantly, absorbing stories and voices from a world he no longer touched. In solitude, knowledge was his only companion. Christopher Knight lived by a strict personal code: never to be seen, never to speak, never to interact. He moved through the woods like a shadow, careful not to leave a trace. If a door creaked beneath his touch or a twig snapped underfoot, he would retreat immediately, even if it meant going hungry. He never used a phone, never wrote a letter, and never reached out to anyone. His sole purpose was to remain invisible, to disappear completely. And for almost 3 decades, he succeeded. No one found him. No one even knew where to look. He became a ghost in the wilderness, a man who vanished not just from sight, but from the world itself. Maine winters are brutal. Temperatures often plunge well below zero, turning the forest into a frozen wasteland. Yet Christopher Knight never lit a campfire, fearing that even a flicker of flame or a wisp of smoke would give him away. Instead, he relied on stolen layers of clothing, wrapping himself tightly against the cold. During fierce storms, he hibernated in his shelter, enduring the biting wind and snow in silence. When asked later how he managed to survive such harsh conditions, he simply replied, "I froze." For Knight, winter was his most honest companion, harsh, unyielding, but trustworthy in its relentless truth. Christopher Knight later admitted that in nearly 30 years of solitude he spoke only one word aloud: "Hi." It was to a hiker he passed by completely by accident, a brief, accidental connection to the world he had left behind. That was the extent of his spoken communication for decades. During all that time he heard no other human voice, only the whisper of wind through the trees, the call of distant birds, and the faint static of radio waves drifting through the forest. And somehow, for him, that was enough. Enough to keep going, enough to survive. Silence became both his refuge and his company. In 2013, authorities at a summer camp near North Pond set up motion sensors and a silent alarm to catch a persistent thief. When the alarms finally triggered, they caught Christopher Knight red-handed, stealing food and supplies under the cover of darkness. But he didn't run, he didn't resist or lie. Instead, when questioned, he calmly said, "I am a hermit." That simple admission marked the beginning of a legend. From that moment on, stories of the elusive man who lived unseen for nearly 30 years began to unfold, capturing the imagination of the world. When the world met Knight, it didn't know how to respond. Was he a criminal, a philosopher, or both? Some saw a threat, others a saint. He had broken laws, but harmed no one. His crime was survival, in a society that doesn't know how to disappear. Knight didn't offer manifestos, he didn't claim enlightenment. When asked why he left, he said, "I had no plans when I left. I wasn't thinking of anything. I just did it." He wasn't chasing peace. He was rejecting noise. He read Dostoevsky, Thoreau, Stephen King. He reread favourite books again and again. He didn't see himself in Walden. He thought Thoreau was soft. Knight lived the life others only wrote about, without seeking an audience. Knight was sentenced to 7 months in jail and probation, with strict conditions. He was released in 2013 into a world of phones, headlines, and constant questions. He gave few interviews, he asked for privacy, and faded again into quiet. He described silence as music. That solitude wasn't loneliness, but clarity. He said he knew himself only in stillness, that the modern world had too much static, too much everything. He had found meaning in the space most people flee from. Knight refused the myth. He didn't call himself enlightened or special. He made no claim to spiritual depth. He just left, and in that vanishing became a legend. Not because he asked to be, but because we couldn't explain him. Knight never capitalized on his story. No memoir, no TED Talk, no press tour. He didn't want to be understood. He wanted to be forgotten, and that may be the rarest wish in our age. Was he mentally ill, or just more awake than the rest of us? Some saw pathology, others saw purity, but maybe he was only asking a question the world couldn't answer. What if the truest version of yourself is the one no one sees? Knight's story stands out, not for bloodshed, not for conspiracy, but for its profound stillness. In a culture of noise and image, he chose invisibility, and in that became unforgettable. Christopher Knight didn't run from justice, he ran from noise, from the constant hum of the modern world, the unending chatter and chaos that filled everyday life. He didn't want to be followed or caught, but not because he feared punishment. He simply wanted silence. He sought refuge in the forest's quiet embrace, a place where the trees could tell his story without words. And perhaps, in that profound stillness, he found a kind of freedom most of us never truly experience. A freedom beyond the reach of society, beyond the grasp of time. In silence, he was finally free. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of history's most mysterious cases. If Knight's story left you thinking, Share the podcast, subscribe, and leave a review. Have a mystery that haunts the edge of silence? Send it in. We're always listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and remember, some vanish to escape the world, others to understand it.